Let's bring in the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us this morning. You saw in that piece, and you saw in the president's press conference, he signaled he may be ready to scrap the phone record collection program. If he does, how hard will you fight, and can you prevail?
Well, perspective is important here, George. If you think about where we are and what the panel did, which was dominated by law professors, well, they basically said the information is important, but where we keep it may be up for debate. So that's an important, I think, a very important milestone for those who saw this as devastating to the NSA. I disagree. Basically, what they said was this information is a vital part of our counterterrorism effort to keep Americans safe. We just don't think that they should collect it in a very safe place, in a vault, if you will, with the NSA. We think we should spread it back across the phone companies and have the government mandate. Well, here's my concern. And by the way, privacy groups reject the notion that having the government mandate that the phone companies keep these records so that the government can access them is probably less safe than the configuration that we have. But here's the good news about that, George. Now we're going to debate about how we have access to information, not names, not phone numbers, not addresses, but numbers. So when a terrorist overseas calls into the United States, we have some ability to figure out who that is. That's what the debate is now. I think that puts us on much better ground, much more solid ground. They found no violations, no unlawful activity, no scandal. None of that was found in this report. But what they said is maybe it shouldn't be with the government. Maybe it should be mandated by the government, that it's held by the private companies. And I think that's a very different debate, and a debate I think we should have, and it's probably a good one. I'm reluctant because I think it opens it up to more privacy violations when the companies hold it. They don't have somebody directly controlling that information. That's not their job. Their job is to provide service. That these are business records, not private records of content, and so they're not listening to phone calls. I think it is, in that regard, a very important step to actually debating on the same set of data points.
There's also the debate over the constitutionality. We saw that report from the federal judge, Richard Leon, this week. He's an appointee of President George W. Bush, and he said it's almost certainly not constitutional. I want to read part of his opinion right here. He said, "I cannot imagine a more indiscriminate and arbitrary invasion than the systematic and high-tech collection and retention of personal data on virtually every single citizen for purposes of querying it and analyzing it without judicial approval. Surely such a program infringes on that degree of privacy that the founders enshrined in the Fourth Amendment." Your response?
Well, a couple of things. 16 federal judges, 36 different opinions, all have had a different opinion that it is not. Remember, no names, no addresses, just numbers. And these are business records, not your personal records. That's very, very different. There's been hundreds of appellate decisions reaffirming the government's right to get business records in the course of terror investigations, or in this case, determining if a terrorist from overseas is calling into the United States. So this is one case when you have a huge volume. Anyway, it's, again, perspective is important. Yes, this one district judge that doesn't handle national security cases had a difference of opinion. That's our good system. But it is he set aside his own decision, as he said, likely to be overturned because of the sheer volume and body of federal judges who have already reviewed this. As late as last July, by the way, or as early as last July, reaffirmed the fact that this program is legal. It does meet the constitutional test, does meet Fourth Amendment tests, and should continue in the face of the threats to the United States. I think that's important.
How about this question about amnesty for Edward Snowden? The senior NSA analyst who's heading the Snowden task force, Rick Leggett, we saw him on 60 Minutes this week saying it should be considered. Take a look.
So my personal view is, yes, it's worth having a conversation about. I would need assurances that the remainder of the data could be secured, and my bar for those assurances would be very high. It would be more than just an assertion on his part.
You ready to engage in that conversation?
Listen, I do think he should come home. I personally pay for his plane ticket and be held accountable for his actions. Here's where I think he's crossed the line now, George. He has contacted a foreign country and said, "I will sell you classified information for something of value." That's what we call
You're talking about his open letter to Brazil.
Absolutely. He has traded something of value for his own personal gain that jeopardizes the national security of the United States. We call that treason. And I think that letter, very clearly lays out who this gentleman is and what his intentions were clearly. And so would I like him to come back? He should come back. He didn't use any of the whistleblower protection avenues laid out before him. None. Zero. He went to the press, then he went to the bastion of internet freedom, China, and then Russia, to lay claims that, by the way, this individual report dominated by law professors just said there was no scandal, no surveillance under the 215 program. All of the things that he's been saying have, I think, been repudiated by this report.
Finally,
all of that, I think we need to take into consideration.
Finally, you've warned that the terror threat may be increasing again, Al-Qaeda on the rise again, and we know that they have targeted the Christmas season before. Do you have any more reason to be especially concerned right now? Is the threat level going up around this holiday season?
Well, I think, and any national holiday that we would experience here, like Christmas, is something that we are concerned about. I don't think I see any other threat stream that I wouldn't say is out of the norm. But again, and the reason we say that is because there are more affiliates, more al-Qaeda affiliates from around the world, al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. You have al-Shabaab now claiming some al-Qaeda affiliate, Sharia in Libya. All of these groups want to have and have the aspiration to commit acts of violence against Westerners in the United States. That's why this threat has grown, and we have more chances to miss something, and we have just less opportunity not to pay attention to every single clue we can find to make sure that we protect the citizens of the United States. And by the way, we can do that in a way that protects privacy and civil liberties, but you have to be arguing about the same sets of data points. And I would hope that this report stops this inflammatory language of surveillance and scandal and devastating. None of that, this report, I think, concluded was true. And some of the shortcomings of this report, real quick, George, they didn't talk to the FBI when it came to Section 215 for any length about the value of certain programs that they recommended against. And by the way, including 215, they never had a sit-down, long conversation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation who does these investigations. That's an unfortunate shortcoming in this report. And we'll be, I think, talking about that in the days ahead. Some good things in this report, some things that are concerning in this report, recommendations of things that the government should do that they are already doing, and things that the government shouldn't do that they're not doing. And so I think this is not the holy grail of reports, but I do think it crossed a very important milestone in saying, hey, no scandal, no law breaking. Now let's just have an honest debate about where we think we ought to go in trying to stop terrorists from blowing up American citizens here in the United States.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for your time this morning. Have a good Christmas.
Thanks, George. Thanks you as well.